Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Jordan and thank you so much for clicking on one of my bookish videos. Today I'm super excited because I am filming my July reading wrap-up video. July was a very successful month in terms of the very wonderful and favorite books that I found and read. It's actually funny because July is normally one of my most romance heavy months, with it being the summer, but I really got back into the groove with my fantasy and sci-fi books in July. If you want to see the wonderful books I read in July, then keep on watching. Okay, so in July, I read 13 books total, which is a very good number, although I will say for me personally, July is normally my biggest reading month of the year because I go on vacation. I didn't have the most successful reading month, especially while on vacation. I just wasn't really in the mood for reading that much. And so while I do wish I would have read more books that I had on my TBR in July, it still was a really successful month of reading. I actually am really thrilled because I found several new favorites of the year, and that was something that I feel like I hadn't had in quite a time. And so I found quite a few 5-star reads and favorites, which is very, very exciting. So without further ado, let's get right into my wrap up. Okay, so at the beginning of the month, I found one of my favorite books of the year, and this is a book that I believe is a debut author and I hadn't heard many people talking about. And so I was excited to read it, but I was just absolutely blown away by this book. And that is Everything Was Beautiful and Nothing Hurt by Ben Reeves. This book was gifted to me by Avid Reader Press, so thank you very much to them. This book I think I'm going to think about for a very, very long time. It follows Travis, who is Death in the modern world. He acts as Death, basically sitting with people in their final moments and escorting them into whatever the afterlife or post-death holds. In this book, you are following Travis as he kind of veers off his very typical path and job of being not really friendly or making connections with people because he knows that they are about to pass. He develops a relationship and a very strong connection with Delilah, who is a midwife, and her daughter Layla goes through so much because of his feelings and love for them. This book is so interesting and so unique. I think the writing was absolutely beautiful and also really just unique in the different vignettes that the author used to show Travis's thoughts. I really just enjoyed seeing the way that he interacts with other people. I thought this was an absolutely tragic but also really healing story about grief and death and loss. And I actually by the end was absolutely sobbing, but I think it was very comforting for me to think about someone like Travis who sits with our loved ones and escorts them on to whatever is out there after they die. It just was very, very comforting for me. So this was a 5 stars. Another book that released in July that I read at the beginning of the month is Into the Fading Twilight by Catherine Cowles. This was gifted to me by Catherine and her team, so thank you very much to them. I am fairly new to Catherine Cowles. I know that she is a huge hit, but I started reading her books with this series. This is the Starlight Grove series. So this is the second book in the series, and this follows Cole and Nova. And if you read the first book, which I highly, highly recommend, you know that Nova is the main character in the first book's best friend who goes missing, and Cole is the one to find her at the very end of the first book. And so this picks up right away following basically Nova as she is going through a healing journey and trying to cope with her trauma after being kidnapped and tortured and held captive for, I would think, over a year. And Cole is just someone who understands her so well. He knows exactly what she needs, knows not to push her, and also not to be overbearing. I loved their relationship so, so much. Cole is a very grouchy, kind of isolated single dad, and I think that Nova's character, she is such a strong female main character who has gone through so much. I love this series because it's a romance mixed with a mystery, which is very new to me, that type of subgenre, but I found that I really, really enjoy it, and I think I gave this a 4.25 stars. I am very, very excited for the next book in this series. series. Another romance book that I read at the beginning of the month that was released at the beginning of July is In Stormy Weather by Chelsea Curto. This was gifted to me by Atria Books, so thank you very much to them. I will not lie. One, I've never read a Chelsea Curto book before this. I know that her hockey romance series is really, really big. And two, when I started reading this, it did take me a second to get into, to the point where I just was not feeling it at the beginning. I think that also personally was me. I just was like reading way too many romance books back to back. I am very glad that I stuck this out because I really ended up enjoying this, and I understand why it's so many people's favorite books of the year. This is another like weather romance. It follows Quincy and Sebastian, and they both are meteorologists of a sort. Quincy hosts this social media live show where she has like millions of followers, and she is very known for explaining the weather and like getting it out to the normal person. And Sebastian works for like top weather stations and news channels, and they are enemies. Quincy is best friends with Sebastian's sister, and so they have had a like frenemy situation for years now, since they were kids. And in this book, they end up beginning to work together as they are both competing for the same job and also tracking a massive hurricane in Florida. I loved the banter between Quincy and Sebastian. It was so much fun. I really liked Quincy as a female in a STEM related career, and how her like inner dialogue reflected a lot of what females go through, especially in male dominated fields. And I just had a great time reading this. So this was a 4.25 stars. I'm sweating so bad. I had to take my sweater off. The next book that I read was a sequel that I was so excited for, and that is Ruinous Ends by Ivy Marie. This was gifted to me by Get Underlined, so thank you very much to them. This is the sequel to Immortal Consequences, and if you know me, Immortal Consequences was one of my favorite books of 2025 and just such a fantastic debut. So I have been very much looking forward to this book. It is the sequel and conclusion to this duology. This is a dark academia fantasy duology, and it follows 6 different characters who are students at Blackwood Academy, which is a school in the afterlife. After they die, they are recruited to go to school there, and they basically learn like how to help people transfer into the afterlife successfully. This book follows the tail end of Immortal Consequences, which left massive cliffhanger. The characters who were previously friends or had an alliance are all separated into their duos. Specifically, we are really following Ren and August, who have shifting personalities and a lot of betrayal going on between the two of them. I really enjoyed this book. I really liked learning more about these characters' past and how they ended up dying in the afterlife. And I think that the world building really continued and was really fun and immersive in this book. And the ending made me cry. I really hope that this is not the end, even though we do get a novella coming out in the fall for these characters. But I want more. Like, I want to know more about them. I'm sad. I want to stay with them forever. This was a 4.25 stars for me. Next, I did a reread of a favorite series of mine, and then I read one of my most anticipated books of the year, and that is of the Villains trilogy by V.E. Schwab. First of all, I cannot believe I got an early copy of Victorious, so thank you so much to Tor Books and Leo PR. I was preparing to read this series, to do a reread and then read my arc of Victorious closer to the release in October, but I did a little buddy read with my book besties Haley and Becca, and so I ended up kind of pivoting from my whole TBR in July and doing a reread. So if you do not know this series, one, if you like sci-fi and like superheroes and like dystopian, you need to read this series. First book is Vicious. The second book is Vengeful. And then we have been waiting many years for the release of Victorious, which comes out in October. But guys, let me tell you something. The wait was so worth it because V. Schwab wrapped up the series and like all these different characters, storylines, and different plot lines so well. This is a sci-fi like superhero series. It follows Victor Vale and Eli, and they, when they are in college, figure out a way to die and then force themselves to come back to life. And when they come back to life, they acquire superhuman powers. And so this entire series is very much them as the extraordinaries fighting against the normal humans who are trying to control the extraordinaries. It's very much good versus evil, life versus death. And you have such complex, morally gray characters, which I personally eat up. I'm not going to say much about Victorious, but again, so worth the wait, so well done. I love this found family, especially Victor, Mitch, and Sydney, and Dole. I cried. Like, I sobbed my little heart out at this ending. It was so good. I really honestly want to reread it again in October when it releases. And this is a 5-star and a favorite book of the year for me. Next, I read a very anticipated contemporary romance rom-com, and that is Leave and Come Back. This I listened to on audio thanks to Penguin Random House Audio, and I highly recommend the audiobook if you're able to listen. It is such a fun way to enjoy this rom-com. It feels so immersive. Like, I felt like I was at this Indian wedding with these characters. This is a debut novel, which I think is so impressive. Jessica Joyce, who I love, and my friend Pri from A Book for Three was raving about this book, so obviously I had to pick it up. This follows Simran and Leo. Simran is called to go back to her estranged family for a 2-week Indian wedding for her cousin, and her and Leo are best friends. They've recently just started dating, and when Leo decides to follow her to the wedding, they have to come up with Operation DDLJ, which is the cousin's plan to try and get Simran's aunt to like Leo and not cause another crisis in the family during this big wedding. Simran is dealing with the grief of losing her parents at a very young age, but she, because of losing her parents and her grief, really never felt like she fit in with her aunt, her uncle, and her cousins when they adopted her. And so she left them and has been estranged to them for years. And so she's returning to this wedding to try and get some sort of closure about her parents. There is a very heavy storyline, very emotional with that. But at the same time, like, this book is funny. It made me like, I want to go to an Indian wedding, and I just loved the characters and the writing style. I think it was so unique and such like a fresh concept and romance in the contemporary romance genre. So I would give this a 4.5 stars, but it's definitely a favorite for me. Next, I read another very anticipated read, and that is A Forsaken Prophecy by Stacey McEwen. This was gifted to me by Saga Press, so thank you very much to them. I previously read A Forbidden Alchemy, which came out last year. This is a romantasy series, and let me tell you, I ate up A Forbidden Alchemy. It is a Peaky Blinders like inspired romantasy series, which is so much fun. And specifically, it follows Nina and Patrick. Patrick is the last alchemist in this world where the alchemists control basically like the politics and the magic of this continent. And Nina is the only earth charmer, and she is basically the secret to winning the war between these different factions and groups. At the beginning of this book, based on the cliffhanger in A Forbidden Alchemy, you know that Patrick and Nina were previously lovers, and they both feel betrayed by each other in different ways and are not on the right footing. Patrick Coulson is one of my favorite male main characters. I think he is so, I love him so much. When he comes on the page, I just get like butterflies, in my stomach. And him and Nina, I really enjoyed their relationship in this book. It kind of feels like betrayal after betrayal. They have terrible communication skills, but they also really love each other, and they can't get over their chemistry and their connection. I really enjoyed this. I think it carried the plot of like the war and the different factions and like political dynamics forward. Another crazy cliffhanger at the end, and I cannot wait to read the third and final book in, I think, this trilogy. This was a 4.25 stars. Next, I read one of my most anticipated books of the year, and that is Dreamland by Olivia Blake. This was gifted to me by Tor Books, so thank you very much to them. Olivia is one of my favorite authors, and this is her new gothic fantasy book. And let me tell you, this is a wild ride. If you like grew up or read Olivia in her indie days before the Atlas 6 was traditionally published, I think you will really enjoy this, and this will be very like nostalgic for her old like indie writing. This is dark, it is body horror, it is strange, it is like an odd fantasy world. I got weirded out reading it. I could not stop reading it. It was so gripping, and I just love the concepts that she comes up with. It very much reminded me of Girl Dinner in that very unique, a fun, interesting concept to delve into. This follows Anya. She is an actress living in LA, and she meets basically this very like world famous actor and his sister, and is recruited to join their family to babysit their adult son who has like a medical condition, and she agrees to do so in hopes that William, the actor, will like offer her an acting job because she's been struggling. She quickly learns that this family is hiding many secrets, and specifically Julian, the son, there's something odd going on with him, and the something odd, as she comes to discover, is he is being possessed by the devil in some sort of ritual that this family is performing, and she is just experiencing all these weird dreams and like visuals and just doesn't know what's happening. And so this whole story is her unraveling it. This is creepy, and like again, the whole body horror is just not my typical genre, but I love Olivia. I love the different themes she integrated into this book. Not my favorite of hers, but I really liked it. So this is a 4 stars. The last book I read in July was another very anticipated read for me, and that is The Good Parts. This was gifted to me by Grand Central Pub, so thank you very much to them. I have heard so many good things about this book, mainly that it's super emotional, and that's really all I knew going into it. I will say I've had this discussion with a few people now. I went into this book thinking that it was a contemporary romance, focus on romance and a love story, and I do think that's how this book was marketed. This did not change my feelings about the book, but I do think it was mismarketed because I don't necessarily think, based on the ending, that this is a romance book. Without saying too many spoilers, you can put 2 and 2 together and go from there. However, this is a beautifully written book, very unique, and I cannot believe this is a debut. This follows Rose and Landon at the beginning of this book finds out that Rose, his wife, has taken a forgetting pill to wipe her memory of her entire life and has fled to London, where she is trying to restart. And so from the very beginning of the book, Landon goes to chase after her and try to win her back over and get her to fall in love with him for a second time. The concept of the forgetting pill is absolutely crazy to me, but what I really liked about this book is it is told in dual timelines, so you get to see Rose and Landon as they meet in college and fall in love, and then you see them throughout their years that they are married and trying to start a family. And so throughout the book you get closer and closer to discovering what happened to Rose and Landon that led them to basically have this big falling out, and Rose wanted to wipe her memory. It is tragic. It is really sad. I don't want to spoil again, but I would say definitely check trigger warnings because this deals with a very heavy, I think, triggering topic related to death. I definitely cried. I got my heart broken. I did kind of like the ending. Like, I thought it was really powerful and just, again, not a romance, but like a very strong character driven story, and also reflection on a love story and kind of moving past a love that you had, but also appreciating it for what it was. Really beautiful. 4.5 stars for me. That is it for this video. Hopefully you found something that I read in July that intrigues you, that you want to put on your TBR going forward. I read a lot of new releases in July. Like, I think the majority. There were so many books that released in July that were on my TBR that I was so excited about. I definitely am excited to read more backlist books, hopefully going forward, but I will say I think July was a turning point for me in getting back into fantasy and sci-fi. So I'm really excited to keep reading those genres genres going forward, especially going into the fall. If you enjoyed this video, I would love it if you give it a thumbs up and let me know in the comments your favorite book that you read in July. If you want to see more bookish videos from me, I would love it if you subscribe, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.